Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Grid Shift podcast. I'm your host, as always, Alex Giarrante. Welcome to today's episode. We have a strong guest that I'm very excited to talk to. For those of you joining for the first time, as always, we are sponsored and brought to you by Profit Access AI. We work with manufacturing and renewable energy companies to help them scale revenue by implementing automation, operations, systems, and AI. So we'll jump in today. But if you're serious about growing your business and learning more, make sure you stay till the end. As always, connect with our guests, like and subscribe. All the support is very, very appreciated. So as we get into it, today I'm joined with Vince Bryan III, the CEO of Whoosh Innovations. And what he has going on is really, really cool. Vince has actually built a company that's solving, in my opinion, a real infrastructure challenge from agriculture to aquaculture, and through a completely different approach through an engineering and systems. I've had the pleasure to talk with Vince a little bit prior to this. Vince, good to see you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start here. This is very interesting for the audience. Your background originally was in law. You had a corporate background, international business, and now I would say you're building a highly technical company. So walk me through the transition, and just for the audience, what pulled you into building this, and just a little bit about your background.
Sure, I'll try to keep it short, but I could make it long if you want. uh, the It was a winding road for sure. I grew up in a family that was everybody was a doctor, but there was a big entrepreneurial bent in the family. I don't think I had the skill set to be in the doctor. That took me down a path in school way back when of poli-sci and econ, um, and that brought me to law school, and so that's where I became engaged, and in my career really was in law, and that quickly brought me to international law. So I got a master's of law in transnational business transactions, and spent time in Taipei, Taiwan, and Salzburg, Austria, and so forth. But the real pull was always back to the family, and my folks had a place over in Eastern Washington, and when I was in school, really, we had developed what is now known as the Gorge Amphitheater in Eastern Washington, a venue there. But there was a reason for building the amphitheater, and that was because we had orchards and vineyards, and we needed to bring people to the site to make, under the Tide House rules at the time, to really make it financially viable, and that was for the wine part of it. And on the apple side of it, we started. I was taking a look at our financials, and was literally looking at it, the situation, saying, we're getting killed at harvest time, and that led us to what has become Whoosh Innovations, because what we really realized was that the pickers in the field, when they're picking apples and so forth, were very fast when they were picking, but 70% of the time they weren't picking apples. They were moving ladders, they were walking up and down the ladders and doing this kind of thing. So we focused on developing a harvester system that was for picking apples at that time. But in the process, we had to develop a pneumatic technology that is now famous at Whoosh, with the salmon cannon. But it was as, how do we move fruit from a tree to a bin gently? And it is that beginning that ultimately led us to Whoosh Innovations, and the development of the technology for fish. And I think one of the things that we learned in that process of developing stuff for the orchards was it was really hard to develop quickly if you were developing something for the harvest industry, when that only occurred once a year. So when we were going to go after the fish side of things, we really had the vision of how could we help in fish passage at hydro dams. And that was really the end game. But to get there, it took us from processing plants where we had dead fish year round that we could perfect the technology with. Then we went to aquaculture, where we became very aware that water usage and the power that it takes if they bring water into the plant, they have to clean all the water before it returns to the sea, and how expensive and costly that is to the operations. And so that was a big energy savings focus. And then into fish passage, which is really where the technology shines in all of its glory, because it does not matter to us how high, or to the fish, how high the dam or barrier is. The fish can be up and over that in a matter of seconds. And we've added into that a technology we call facial recognition. Think of it like facial recognition, but it takes a look at the fish that are coming through as they enter the system, and we can, for example, determine if it's an invasive species. Should it not go over the dam? Is it a wild fish that should go over the dam? Is it a hatchery fish that should go to the hatchery? But the beauty of it in the whole arrangement is that we can improve fish passage and at the same time not have to use the water, basically spilled water, over a fish ladder, down the ladder, and have it produce power for additional power generation or irrigation water, or however they want to use it. And it's typically about 10% of the water flow that is lost from an energy projection standpoint. So it seems like a great opportunity for everybody. It's a win-win on both sides of the equation here. But it's a very different way of solving this problem, and that has presented its own challenges, just because it's a big change.
So what started as a labor and efficiency issue in orchards, right, which you just broke down, and you're trying to solve a completely different problem, that's actually what led to Whoosh Innovations, which has to do with, as you just explained, about the fish. Now, let's simplify it for people, right? Because I know I had the pleasure of talking to you a little bit before the show, and you explained it a little bit to me, but so that all happens, and what really gave you the idea to go from the inefficiency and figuring out what was going on in the orchards to all of a sudden solving this complex problem with the fish? So let's simplify it. What does Whoosh do today as it stands now?
Yeah, well, uh, we transport fish in a pneumatic tube over barriers and from point A to point B. And it's in the simplest form, that is what we're doing. But we're doing it without using water. So it allows the fish to migrate past the dam. So the dam can be 300 feet high. As they approach the dam, we attract them into the system. So they swim into the system today, and we attract them by creating a flow, and we just do that with the pump with the water below the dam. That's important for the fish, because water coming down a ladder today, you hear about climate change and so forth. But part of the problem is that the water coming down that ladder is now warmer than the water that's coming through the turbines, which is pulling from deeper in the pool. And so the fish is confused. I don't know if I want to be going up that ladder that's warm. It's might be my death here. And so they tend to slow down their migration, which only perpetuates the problem of getting up into their spawning grounds timely, and before the waters get too warm down below. So in our system, we've done studies where it shows that the fish, as opposed to a ladder, on a side-by-side comparison, ended up 3 dams further up the river in the next week, simply by going through the Whoosh system as compared to the ladder. And so it's a huge opportunity, I think, for the industry, the hydro industry really to um, to establish that, hey, we've come up with a technology here that it solves this problem that is otherwise preventing the hydropower industry from really participating in the way it needs to for the next 50 years anyway. And that's really our estimate, that there's a 50-year transition that's going to have to take place on the grid from where we are today to get to maybe not relying on hydro in the future. And when the dams are going to either have to be replaced or hopefully not replaced. And our job is, we want to have fish between now and then, and when we get there, that we're not starting from zero, that there's fish in the rivers.
So essentially, you have built a system that moves fish through infrastructure like dams, like you said, but without moving large volumes of water. Am I understanding that correctly?
Exactly right. And the physics of that work well on high head dams, if you think about it that way, because we're not moving that whole column of water up to get the fish up over. We're just
So that's what makes your approach different, is that you're not moving, like you were saying, water ladders, and the fish really don't necessarily like using that because the difference in temperature. So what's the difference economically and operationally with what you guys have created versus maybe, the other ways that they are able to do this?
Yeah, well, let's talk about those other ways real quick. In much of the world, a fish ladder is been the default system for many years. And that's probably more so on the West Coast than on the East Coast. The East Coast, they tended to use fish lifts, which is basically an elevator. The fish go in, there's an elevator, they get lifted up. You're lifting all the water with the fish in it and then dumping on the other side. Susceptible to breakdown, as you can imagine. It's problematic, to say the least, and the maintenance costs there are high, and the infrastructure costs, capital costs to put it in, are high. On the latter side, it's actually worse. A ladder system on a large dam can make a whole hydro project not economical. It can be that expensive. So imagine a river that's got 10,000 CFS of water coming down. You're under the regulations, you should be diverting 1,000 CFS of that water down a fish ladder for the fish to get up it. And so you've taken 10% of the flow, it's coming down the fish ladder. Well, the fish actually don't need that much water to get up, but they're competing with the attraction flow that's coming through the turbines and so forth. So you're trying to attract the fish over here with this other 1,000 CFS. So it's you're solving one problem and creating another one. So we've separated those two pieces. We've said, look, the attraction flow, we don't have to take it down the ladder from up above. We can use the water that's down below already and artificially create the attraction with a pump. And then to get the fish up, we don't need all that water. Now, for those who are sensitive to the fish, which we are, that is our focus, the tube is misted on the inside. And what that enables the fish to do is exchange oxygen when it's traveling quickly through the tube. So all of the studies have shown that there is no cortisol levels of stress to show stress or other markers that would suggest that the fish is in any way stressed by that experience. And oftentimes, because the fish is moving very fast, 25 feet per second, you're moving 250 feet in 10 seconds. Well, it takes that long before it even kicks in on the fish that, hey, is this a stressful environment? So usually they're in and out of the system, and then they're just going, because they just didn't expend all of that energy climbing up 100 feet
Right.
up a ladder. Um, so
And
it's
not to mention the water savings. So you to me that matters, but break that down a little bit. Why is it that how you guys do it where really you're not transferring the water, you're not having that waste like the elevator you said that's way more efficient. But what does that actually look like at scale, being able to use your technology versus some of the older, traditional ways, I guess you could say?
well, it depends on the size of the dam and the fish ladders there. But we had a consulting firm out of Canada actually came down and they just volunteered to do a study. Um, and it was a paper study, clearly, but they had got a bunch of public information from 8 dams, 4 on the Columbia River and 4 on the Snake River. And those are the 4 on the Snake have been very controversial. It's been in litigation for 20 years about whether those dams should come down or not. And uh, and what it showed was that if you replaced, and I'm not suggesting we replace all ladders, what the study showed is if you replace those ladders with the Whoosh systems, though they would have produced about $20 million a year in additional revenue from the megawatts that would have come had it not gone down the ladder. And
Ah,
it is significant from a operator standpoint, and from at a time right now, my vision for how this could work really is that there are a lot of data centers, AI, so forth, that need power, and hydropower is particularly good as a base load um, for these kinds of uses. We could You could see not over 90% of the dams have no fish passage that are around in the country. And so you can see also that coming in and 97% of the dams don't have hydropower on them. So just to be clear, you can under new regulations that have gone in over the last 5 or 6 years, you can put in hydropower even at Army Corps and Bureau of Reclamation dams, take advantage of that water and create fish passage. And it could all be done by private industry coming in and saying, look, we will put this in. We'll put in the fish passage and we'll take the hydropower in return. And our contribution to the whole thing is that we're saying, and that you don't have to spill that water at the same time for the fish, but we are going to take care of the fish.
so that's really the intersection of the energy with the infrastructure and systems, and now the hydropower. So, wow, that's not something we talked about. I do
Yeah.
find that to be very interesting. So, I you had mentioned about the vision capability, and we also talked about some of the early stage AI work that you were doing. So tell us a little bit about the I'm drawing a blank. Is it the fish vision or the fish detection? Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, we call it facial recognition.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very punny.
So, so um, we had to be creative with our names after the salmon cannon was how the pneumatic technology was named, not by us, but by really the media. And so we adopted it. But because we were doing more than just that, we had to be as equally creative with other products that we were producing. The facial recognition was really came out of that orchard experience again. When we were in the orchard, packing houses for years have used technology to grade fruit. And when we were doing the harvesting in the field, we needed to grade the fruit then too. It was sort of a pre-sort, and we were determining, is this fruit good enough to go to the packing house, or should it really go to a processor like a applesauce producer? And so if we separated the fruit in the field that way, the grower did not have to pay to store apples that were never going to get paid for at a packing house. They could go straight to the processor. And so that core technology that we developed for the harvester, we said, well, for fish, it's not that much different. We're looking at size. That was key. We needed to know whether it had an adipose fin or not, because the adipose fin is clipped on the fish if it's a hatchery fish, oftentimes. And so that would be like a defect in an apple, where a defect would be a bruise or a bird peck or something like that. And then there was the quality part, which is really the color and so forth. And that was more like, hey, we could use that same kind of thing and tweak it and for speciation. So now we could identify the species of fish that was coming through and get a count on those fish, which was of interest to all the biologists and the agencies. So that core technology was really it's a older technology that was developed for the packing house. What we had to do though was, first of all, make it small for the harvester, and then we had to make it fast in a small package, and then we had to make it work in a water environment.
Right.
And all those things are done.
Wow. So when did that technology come out, the what you were just referring to, after, not obviously not with the orchards and packing, but with the fish? When did that actually
Yeah.
launch?
Our first pilot of that was in 2017.
Oh,
And
wow.
and it was really at that time when we talked about AI or even machine vision in the space that we were in. I mean, people's eyes would glass over. They didn't know what we were talking about. And again, once again, we were introducing a technology that was so radically different from what had been done in the past, which was the technology we were up against was somebody looking through a window and hitting a hand clicker, basically, to count the fish. And that's the way that it had been done for 40 years.
So in 2017, you're doing this way before companies were even thinking about something like this. Now, fast forward to today, how has that evolved with, with what you're doing now? Has it just gotten better and better, or how has that evolved since 2017? I mean, almost 10 years now.
Yeah, AI has blown up. The biggest evolution, I would say, is that everybody, AI is not a scary word. It's everybody has a vision for what that is. May not know all that means, but for us, what's happened is that we can be very custom focused on applications and so forth. So if we're in an aquaculture setting, they may have tagged those fish, for example, as well. So they're watching the individual fish, but and they want to know the life history of that fish as it's evolving through their growing up.
Right.
Because they're trying to develop a fish that grows faster, as an example. Well, okay, we'll track that. We'll track that fish, that individual fish. Those are the kinds of things that you can get down to that level of specificity, I guess you could say, that and the real magic, I think, what that separates us from what most people are doing today with AI is that most people are looking at the data by vision. What's the data I can get off of this? We're saying, well, actually, it's not so hard anymore. We can get the data. But what are we going to do with that data in the next fraction of a second, and making that decision so that in our case, it's sorting a fish. Is that fish going over the dam, or is it going to the hatchery, or are we putting it below the dam, or are we removing it out of the river because it's an invasive species? All of those decisions are getting made by the time that fish exits the facial recognition portion of the system and before it's transported. So there's a gatekeeper system in there that's being activated instantaneously. And that part is where I think we call it selective fish passage. it's where the clearly where the future is needs to be in the rivers, because you think about it, you can return a river to its um, intended native species over time
Right.
by
The
doing
ecosystem that it should be.
right, right, exactly.
That's wow, that's yeah, no, I do want to ask where does AI play a role today in your business? I mean, obviously you said 2017, you're way ahead of it. Now you're using it as you just said, most people are using it for the data, but you're using it in different ways. Where else does AI play a role in your business currently?
I in some ways, I mean, if you're talking about me personally, that's a different answer entirely from. I can give you a corporate business answer. I can't tell you how much more efficient it makes my work on a daily basis. Um, but specifically, our focus with AI is on the product applications itself. And so, uh, for example, if we have cameras on our facial recognition system that are picking up both infrared and vision, um, and we're looking for a sort of a particular sort on a species that might be a hybrid species. Well, we might not even be able to see it with the eye, but the AI over time and seeing those hybrid species we can categorize those and using maybe infrared and having categorized those, then have it sort on those fish, and we can get the hybrid species, which is maybe undesirable in a particular river system, and treat those fish differently. So it's really um, it's taking a lot of the time that otherwise you would have had to code and out of the mix. And we need the images still, and so most of our time now is spent getting images, and fish going up a river change that morphologically they change. And so one of the trickier things has been, well, how do we implement this if the fish while going up the river is changing? It looks different at the bottom of the river from the time it reaches the top. Um, and so a way of cheating that at the moment until we have a big enough database, I think, really to pull from is that we just recommend to our customers, look, the first year we're not going to sort. We're going to just take the images. Let's get the images for your river at with your fish in it. Then we'll have the whole data set for the year. We'll know everything that moves through here, and then we can make the sort decisions. And we won't make the mistakes, or the AI won't make the mistakes. Um, because we'll
A
have
little bit of a two-step process, but it sounds like you guys have really built something significant there. And that's, I mean, things are moving faster and faster with AI and technology, and who knows where it'll be in 6 months with what you guys are doing. But I do remember you mentioning, the goal is really to, continue scaling the adoption of this technology and expanding the impact on the ecosystems and the waterways and rivers, and even on the other side with fish hatcheries and different industrial environments even. So one question I always like to ask on the podcast as we get towards the end is, hypothetically, if you had a wand to fix one thing in business right now, what would it be?
mm, um, fear of change.
Hmm. Hmm. Expand on that a little bit. That's
Um,
that's
uh, you know, the percentage of people who are open to change is remarkably small. It's easier for people to do what they've done than to make change. I mean, AI is a classic case of this, but with what we're doing also, if you don't see it as an opportunity and adopt it, you're going to be left behind. And and in this case, with our technology, you're going to if you continue to do the way things have always been done, you're going to spend, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars more at one site than you need to spend. it just doesn't cost us that much. We don't have all that infrastructure. You think about all the cement that has to go down if you're building a gigantic fish ladder up the side of a canyon. Um, that's uh, it's all waste from our perspective, and the amount of wasted time is the other part of it. So I would that's what I would change. It's an attitudinal change that needs to happen, and I know it's hard because the older I get, the harder it is for me too. And it's like, oh, you just get tired of it always changing and the acceleration of it. But I think with the AI tools that are out there, certainly the stuff that we're trying to provide, it actually makes your job easier. You just gotta open it up to say, hey, let me give this a chance. Maybe it's not so bad. In our case, even the permitting becomes easier,
Right.
because um, we're not in the water. We're not doing, for example, there's permits that you just get to skip. You have to still check the box, but do you do this? No, we don't do that. We do this. No, the tubes, it's
Because what you're doing is so different than the traditional ways. I mean, just alone not using the water the same way and not, I mean, yeah, that's a differentiator for sure.
yeah. That's that, and our job has become largely about educating on these subjects, and of course, I would say we were unprepared for having to have to spend as much time doing that as we are doing. So we're always at conferences um, talking about it. It's just to answer questions, get people familiar with it, and so that when they're in that situation, and it's typically a biologist is being asked, well, what do we do? How do we solve this problem? They might think, hey, maybe we should go to go to their website and see what they have to offer.
Right.
uh,
So would you say that's probably the main constraint that slows you down the most is just that knowledge gap and the education of the older ways versus now what you guys are offering, or what's the biggest constraint for your business?
yeah, it depends on which part of the business. I think in the aquaculture industry, that's clearly true. It's getting the word out. In uh, the more regulated industries like hydropower and so forth, there's the regulatory system was built to make sure that everything was safe. I mean, putting a dam up, it's got to be safe, and so uh, it's it's designed that way and slow, and expensive to get through the permitting. I think there needs to be more change. There's change happening, but there needs to be more change that recognizes, hey, when you've got a new technology here, it may not fit into that bucket that we were evaluating it before. How do we do it? And there's no mechanism right now for approving a technology. You have to, at each site, it has to get approved. So depending on who's involved at that site, they're either you're starting from scratch again, or you're dealing with somebody who's now already worked with the technology, and it makes a huge difference, just in how long it would take at a particular project. So
Understood. That makes sense. I think this was a really solid conversation, Vince. I am sure most of the people that are listening and are going to listen to this recording don't even understand or have a clue what it is that you do with Whoosh Innovations. And now I think people have a whole new perspective on really how these things happen, right? People take these types of things for granted, in my opinion, right? We see the beauty of nature and we just think that it always takes care of itself, but it really doesn't. And you just explained all of that very, very well. So for the audience, I'll definitely be putting Vince's LinkedIn, his website. He also has a really cool YouTube channel that he's got a catchy little jingle that goes with Whoosh Innovations. That's on the homepage of their YouTube channel. I'll make sure that I share all of that with everybody. But I really appreciate you coming on. And if people want to find out more, like I said, I'll put your website up. But if there's any conferences or anything coming up that you want to let them know that you're going to be at, or anything to close us out, Vince, feel free. But Very interesting conversation. I learned a lot today. I appreciate you coming on.
Well, I appreciate it too. I will tell you two things. One, we are taking investments right now. So you can go to our website and it'll take you to an investment page if you're interested, and it's Reg CF, so anybody can qualify. We are also going to be down at the AFS, which is American Fisheries Society, Washington, or West Coast chapters meetings in Portland, which is at the first week of May. And we'll be down there all week. And there's one day that we're featured in a symposia that is covering about half the day. So if you're interested, come visit us. We're gonna keep teaching.
No, absolutely. And I'll make sure that I get that information. We put it in the description below the podcast so people can check that out. We'll put your links for the website and also for your LinkedIn so people can connect with you more and learn more. We'll also get your YouTube page up there. So yes, absolutely, everybody. Make sure you connect with Vincent and Whoosh Innovations. It's very cool technology. I know you sat and listened and heard all of it, but if you want to see it in action, he does have some really cool things on the site and on the YouTube. And as he just said, if you want to see him live at some conferences, maybe invest and get involved with what Whoosh Innovations is doing, I think that would be ideal for all of humankind, really, because what Vince is doing is completely different. That's why I wanted to have him on today. As everybody knows, I enjoy having conversations that are a little bit outside of the box, and I really enjoyed our conversations today, Vince. So thank you very much for coming on. And if you want to just say goodbye to everybody, or if there's anything you want to close out with.
I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, and go Whoosh.
That sounds awesome. We will see you next time on the Grid Shift podcast. Again, I'm your host, Alex. Our guest today was Vince with Whoosh Innovations, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Grid Shift podcast. Thank you, everybody.